music world and the people who love the best of it lost one of their shining stars today, Prince, 57 years old, and one of those musicians who transcends the fads and prescriptions and genres and forges their own remarkable path. David Bowie and Prince in the same year. The music world does seem paler already. Prince's career began in the late 70s in Minneapolis. He was a kid with dreams of playing basketball, but he stopped growing upwards and started playing music instead. He was in a band, and that band was recording a demo tape in a studio called Moon Sound, where he came to the attention of its owner, Chris Moon. Chris Moon became Prince's first engineer and producer and co-wrote his first hit, Soft and Wet. It was a bit of a hit. He was just beginning to appear in the charts in those days. It was Moon who suggested that Prince call himself Prince, and it was Moon who gave him the key to the studio door.
I had a recording studio in Minneapolis, and he walked into the studio as part of a band. He was a member of the band, and I was producing a demo tape for them. And I had a curious problem that I wanted to start writing some songs, but I had discovered there was an issue with trying to get four musicians, a bass player, a drummer, a guitarist, and a piano player, to all show up at the recording studio on time. So I was trying to resolve this issue, and I'm sitting there on my lunch break, and this band that I'm recording has gone over across the street for some ice cream. And there's one chap left sitting in the studio, and he's playing the piano, and I'm sitting there having my lunch, and then he goes over and plays the drums. And then he goes over and plays the guitar, and then he goes over and plays the bass. And I said, that's the solution to my problem. Instead of getting four musicians to show up on one time, all I got to do is get him to show up. So I went over to Prince. I said, look, how would you like to be famous? And if not famous, at least I'll write you some nice songs, and I'll teach you how to record and engineer and produce yourself. And he nodded. I think that was about as much as he did. I didn't know him from Adam. We'd never really said more than a sentence or two to each other. I reached into my pocket, handed him the keys to my recording studio, which is everything I owned in life, and that's how it began.
What a wonderful story. So he was just this precociously talented kid, was he?
He was this enormously shy, quiet, introverted, unspoken talent that would have been easy to overlook if you weren't paying attention. Everyone says, did you have an eye for talent? Did you know he was a genius when you first met him? No, I didn't. I was just looking for someone that could solve a problem for me. And as we worked more and more in the studio, I came to learn and discover what an enormous talent he was. He was a quiet tornado of creativity that exploded once you set him free.
Where did his ferocious talent come from? Where was it? What was it grounded in?
It was grounded in him wanting to be, and disappointed that he wasn't able to be, a great basketball star.
Because he was short.
He always wanted to be a basketball star. And he had played basketball, but, altitude was working against him.
Yeah.
And fortunately, he wasn't 7'6", or we'd just have another great basketball player and would have missed all that music.
Incredible, Chris. And if you look back over his career, that process of his true independence, his belief in himself, his absolute ability to do whatever he wanted, when he wanted it, despite what his fans wanted, despite what the record companies wanted, was that a defining part of his character?
I think it was born in the studio. When I first started working with him, he was very malleable. He was very meek. He was very quiet. He was very shy. And he was looking for his persona. And I was working in ad agency, largest ad agency in Minneapolis at the time. So I understood marketing. And so, we named him, and then I taught him how to record and produce because he didn't know how to work anything in the studio. And from that, he gained a great deal of voice and independence and strength of his own personal expression. And then I said, look, we need a way to market you, a way for your songs to be set apart. And I said, what I'd like to do is I'd like to start writing some songs for you that have a sexual double entendre, that have, plausible deniability, but a sexual element to them, so that they can be taken either way. And I think by doing this, we can energize the sexual energy of your fans at your age. And so the first song I wrote for him, with the concept of marketing him, ended up being his first hit, and that was Soft and Wet.
Soft and Wet. But that's a filthy song. There's no double entendre in that. That's straight up filthy.
No. You see, now let me correct you, my friend. After that song came out, I'm British, and don't hold that against me.
I don't.
Some might. But my mother, who was a very formal, proper British lady, who I never heard swore her whole life, she heard this song on the radio, and she came up to me in a family gathering, and she said, "I just heard your song on the radio, son, and I really like it, but I have a question for you." And I said, "What's that?" She said, "What is Soft and Wet?" And I looked at my father, who was a proper Englishman, and he said, "You're on your own, son."
What did you say?
And I looked back at my mother, and I said, "Mother, it's about a kiss."
Beautiful.
And so the rest is history.
Was he shy? It's.
He was so shy. Let me tell you how shy he was. He was so shy. When we went to do recordings, the first time I recorded his voice, I would go up to the ad agency where I worked, and I'd leave 2 songs I'd written on the piano each day. So I'd write the lyrics. He didn't write lyrics. I'd write the lyrics, and then he'd come in and write the music for the lyrics. And so the first song we put together, we built all the music first. We laid all the music tracks down, and then it was time to record his voice. So I brought him into the studio, put a mic in front of him, went into the control room on the other side of the glass, and stopped playing the song. And I can hear the song music playing, and he's got headphones on. And I can see him standing in front of me singing, but the needles aren't moving on my recording console. So I push up the volume controls all the way, and I can see him singing in front of me, but the needles weren't moving. So I'm thinking I've got a technical problem. A cable's broken or the mic's bad. So I go out, I swap the cables, I swap the mic, come back in, set it back down, repeat, same problem. No sound coming on the mic. So then I go in while he's singing, and I hear him standing next to the mic singing. You could hardly hear the sound coming out of his mouth. And it took me many, many hours and using several different techniques before I could get him to sing loud enough to be able to record it.
Amazing. And he, in a way, he created this brilliant persona that was so much larger than life and so unreal and so eccentric that it kept the world at bay. It was a sort of a barrier between the world and the true him, wasn't it?
Well, and I think he needed that. I mean, I don't think the world is, I think he had been teased because of his height and whatnot when he was young, and so he was deep inside himself, and he needed a wall of protection from the outside world and himself. And he spoke through his music, not his words, and his persona was the wall that kept him safe.
Yeah. Did you hear from him in recent years, or when he moves on, does he move on completely?
He had called me several times telling me life was lonely being famous, and the thing that I had always hoped one time in my life before I died was that I'd have a chance to sit down and ask him just one question. And I just wanted to ask him, was fame everything you wanted? What did the dream match the expectation?
And what do you think the answer would have been, Chris?
That's why I wanted to ask the question, because I don't know. I mean, I'd love to tell you I knew him well enough, but he had called me on several occasions, and very, very sad about. He says, I just don't know who I can trust, and he says, you're the only person that ever did anything for me, and never asked for anything back. But he says, now I don't know why people are around me. He says, I think they're around me because they want to be around my fame or they want money. And so I don't know whether in the final analysis, I think he would have done his music no matter what. I just don't know whether the fame, was everything he was hoping it would be.
Chris Moon, the man who first recorded Prince in Minneapolis back in the 70s.